All right, what is up, everybody? Chris here from Chris Gates Fitness. I am back with another episode of the podcast, and like always, first and foremost, I want to thank you for tuning in. Today's episode is the first in a while, and I want to catch you guys up on why it's been so long since I've had an episode on the podcast, and also talk about the topic of the day. What we're really going to dive into today is the topic of intermittent fasting, and it's one that I want to kind of just explain in some detail for you in case this is something that might work for you to reach whatever your health or fitness goals may be. Intermittent fasting is something I use personally quite a bit when I'm looking to drop weight, and it's also one that I use with a lot of my clients periodically, if not, over the long haul of a diet or of a goal, reaching a client's goals. So I want to dive into what intermittent fasting is, talk about why it works, and some applications of it that may work for you. But before we dive into all of that, like always, I want to remind you that I am an online coach. What I do is I coach people to their fitness or nutrition goals. So if you have any type of goals and you're not sure how to get there, or you just want some guided coaching to get you from point A to point B, that is what I do. I work with people with goals across the board. So whether it's that you want to build muscle, if you want to drop weight, if you want to get stronger, if you have a competition or something like that you're training for, really any type of goal that relates to health and fitness, that's something that I do. And I would love to work with you. So please don't hesitate to reach out. My website is chrisgatesfitness.com. You can follow me on social media. I am on basically every platform, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, anywhere that you are. If you search Chris Gates Fitness, you're likely to find me there. And this podcast, you can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes or Spotify. If there's another podcasting platform that you like to use and the Chris Gates Fitness podcast is not on that platform, please let me know and we'll get it set up and we'll get the thing on there so you can access it. And you can find full videos of these podcast episodes on my Facebook page and on the YouTube account. So, like I said, please go over there, hit like, hit subscribe so you can get all the video content that we put out. So before we dive into intermittent fasting, just wanted to run through what's been happening lately. A lot has happened over the last 2 months. Primarily, my wife and I welcomed our first child, a baby girl, into the world, and that certainly switched up the routine a little bit. So in terms of putting content together, content kind of took a back seat here for a while. The normal things kept on trucking, kept working with clients and doing all the things associated with that. Work continues, training continues, all that good stuff. But content was one of the things that just kind of had to hit pause on it. And I'm excited to get back into it, especially with this episode that we're diving into. I'm not sure what the content creation process is going to be like moving forward. For the longest time now, we've been doing articles, podcast episodes, and all kinds of stuff on a weekly basis. I'm hoping to keep things pretty consistent. Not sure what that routine will look like, but the one thing I can promise is that we're still going to regularly put out a lot of good information for you to try and help you reach your health and fitness goals. So in terms of goals, right before we had our baby, one of the things that I was working on was a 3-phase diet plan, and you can find information about that on chrisgatesfitness.com. I actually, about a month ago, wrote a recap to how that entire diet went, and it went really well. And it's a diet that I think I'm going to utilize myself again moving forward the next time I get into a fat loss, weight loss type of phase. And it's one that I kind of want to, over these last few months of the year, I want to kind of put it all together into, there were a lot of articles I wrote, a lot of podcasts I did, videos I did, and I want to kind of bring all those together and maybe I'm thinking about another ebook to put out there just to put everything in one place, and it's something that you could utilize if it's a type of diet you want to try. But head over to the website if you haven't caught up to all that. It was a really successful diet plan, and I documented a lot of it in the articles section of my website. But now I've moved on to some different training goals, some different nutritional goals. Mainly, my goal here we're talking long term now, is to build muscle, build back strength. And I'm not really interested in revisiting a prolonged diet in terms of losing weight, shedding body fat. That's not really in the cards, I don't think, I'm thinking years. I'm thinking the next 1 to 2 years at the very least are going to be focused on that singular goal of building muscle and building back strength. I haven't really done that properly, I don't think. Over the last couple of years, I've gotten into lean bulking phases, and my training programming has been there. My effort has kind of been there. I think I put in good effort in the gym, but I'm realizing now I could have put in probably a lot more. And I've always kind of gone into a muscle building phase or a bulking phase, knowing that, okay, but in a few months, I'm going to want to cut back down. And I just think you're just stunting your progress if you're constantly pushing back on the one goal that you're trying to go after. So I'm taking that to heart, something that I explain to my clients all the time. I actually haven't done the best job of practicing what I preach. So that's my goal. We're talking long term. I'm sure there'll be some mini cuts in there because that's just an effective way to, keep the body fat levels at a workable level, because if you want to build muscle, if you want to build strength, there's going to be some fat that you gain in the process. So mini cuts can be effective at, keeping that under control in terms of, fat that you're building up in a bulk, but also staying focused to the goal that you have. Whereas, if I'm doing this for the next 2 years and I have 4 mini cuts, we're talking about over 104 weeks of the year, I would probably be cutting for 12 of them, which is a much better ratio than what I've been doing the previous 2 years. So I'm excited to document that, share all that with you. And I have some ideas of content that I can put together, because I think one thing that I've thought about doing for a really long time, but haven't actually gotten down to doing it, is detailing the specifics about how to perform some of these exercises appropriately, and even put together some body part or training specific goal type of programs outlining. So here's an example. Like if you want to build a bigger chest, what's a proper way to go about doing that? What exercises should you be doing? Within those exercises, what is the proper way to do those exercises? How does your diet interact with those training cues that are part of this? I have a lot of ideas of things that I can document along the way that could hopefully help you out, and I'm excited to do that. So that's kind of the life update portion of this whole section. I'm excited to get back to creating content. Hopefully we can get back into the groove of things and make it like it as close to like what it was before, but obviously balancing everything to make it all work. So let's dive into the topic of the day. The topic of the day is intermittent fasting, and let's first start off by defining what intermittent fasting is. Okay, intermittent fasting. It's pretty simple to define what intermittent fasting is, and quite simply, it is just a way to limit calories that help encourage weight loss. In almost every situation that somebody practices intermittent fasting, they're doing it because they want to lose weight. Now, some people use intermittent fasting every day of their lives and it just works. We'll kind of view this more in the lens of with a body weight goal in mind. And like I said, it's a tool. It is nothing more than a tool. And really, if we dive even deeper, it's a framework or a schedule that helps you outline essentially when to eat and when not to eat. And the reason that intermittent fasting is so effective for so many people is because when we kind of create these guidelines, this framework, this schedule that I'm talking about, it makes dieting a lot simpler. So we'll talk about some of these practical examples and what I mean in a few minutes here. But once you set up the framework that we're talking about, it makes it the reason it's effective is because it makes it very easy to remove calories from your diet. So we're talking about an eating schedule. And I want to make sure that we define that so that we're all on the same page. There's nothing magical about intermittent fasting. You will find people on the internet and elsewhere, maybe at your gym, that say intermittent fasting is a superior way to eat. And that's 100% not true. People will tell you that it puts you in a fat burning zone, and that is 100% not true. If you hear anybody really, even outside of this topic, tell you something about a fat burning zone, I'm telling you to walk away from that person, because that's a quick sign that says this person doesn't know what they're talking about. There's no such thing as that. What this is, like I said, is a schedule for you to adhere to with your nutrition. Now, the magic of this diet, this intermittent fasting diet, it really comes into it. Like I said, makes it easy for you to remove calories from your diet. Removing calories from your diet puts you in a calorie deficit. The calorie deficit is the magic piece here. You cannot lose weight unless you're in a calorie deficit. This is another thing that for some reason gets debated, and there's no debate to it. You need to be burning more calories on a daily basis than you are consuming. And this spans the gamut. So we're talking about the amount of food you eat as it relates to just the daily tasks that you do every day. So this could be the calories that you burn just simply walking around the house, doing daily chores. Also, the workouts that you do each day, if you have a training program, any movement, you burn calories, through thought, through action. Whatever you're doing, just your body's daily functions burns calories. All of this brought together, you need to be burning more than you are taking in. Now, you can create a calorie deficit in three main ways. One, you can just reduce the amount of food that you're eating. Number two, you can increase the amount of physical activity that you perform. Or number three, this is the one that I recommend to everybody, is that you do number one and number two. So you reduce the amount of food that you're eating and you increase the amount of physical activity that you're performing. And the reason I recommend that to everybody is because you're getting really both sides of the health benefits. As your weight drops because of, reducing the amount of food that you eat, you're going to get health benefits because you're getting down to a healthier body weight. But if you're also exercising, you're getting the health benefits of regularly exercising. You're not going to see those in the mirror like you are weight loss, but they are just as important. So I recommend that number three, but you don't have to do both. You could do either one, and you'll find yourself into a calorie deficit eventually as you kind of play around with things. And how do you know that you're in a calorie deficit? Well, there's nothing magically going to tell you that you're in one. You can't go and you can find calculators on the internet that will give you an idea, but the only way that you know that the amount of calories that you're eating puts you in a calorie deficit is if you read and react to what you're doing. So you need to weigh yourself every morning. You need to do that for at least a week. Really, you should be doing it daily. Over the long term, if your weight is going down, congratulations, you're in a calorie deficit. If it's not, hey, you know what? You're not in a calorie deficit yet, but that doesn't mean that you screwed everything up. All you got to do is adjust to that. So work out 10 minutes more. If you're doing cardio, do 10 minutes more cardio a day, or take 100 calories out of your diet. Something like that. You can make very small tweaks over time to eventually get yourself in a calorie deficit. Now, that doesn't mean if on day one you weigh yourself and you're saying this is the start of my diet, and on day two, if you're not down any weight, that doesn't mean that you're not in a calorie deficit. You need to do this for, at least a week, right? You need to give your body some time to adjust to the new things that you're doing in this diet. But we're talking over time. You'll eventually find out if you're in a calorie deficit because your weight will go down. If your weight doesn't go down, you're not in a calorie deficit, but it's easy to make up for that. So we've established all of that. Now let's talk about some practical examples of how you can implement intermittent fasting into your day-to-day. All right, there are a number of ways that you can do this, and there's no real magical way to set it up. The magic is about finding what's most ideal for you. So I'm going to tell you about some popular frameworks that seem to work for most people, but understand that you don't have to do it these specific ways. You can set this up in a way that works best for you. One of the methods that I like to recommend to people if they want to try intermittent fasting is, I call it the timestamp method. And this is where you identify a feeding window during the day. And what that means is a window of time where you are allowed to eat calories. So an example, you could say you want your first meal of the day to be at 10 a.m. and your last meal of the day would be at 6 p.m. That would give you an 8-hour feeding window. You can eat calories between 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. and the rest of the day, which a lot of which will be accounted for by just you sleeping, you'll be fasting. So that is an 8-hour on, 16-hour off concept. The 8-16 or 16-8 is one that a lot of people like to use because it gives you enough flexibility that you're not going a super prolonged period without food. It still maybe allows you to have a breakfast, a lunch, and a dinner at somewhat normal times. So that seems to work for a lot of people. But you can time stamp your day really in any way. I mean, if you wanted to go till noon, start eating at noon and end eating at 8 p.m., you're still in the 16-8 framework. That works. And you're still time stamping things that way. So that's one way that you can use intermittent fasting. Another way that you can implement it, this is one that I prefer, is simply skipping breakfast and pushing the first meal of the day to as late as you possibly can. This isn't as feasible for everyone, but it's one that sets you up well for the back half of the day. Now, something I've found personally, and some of my clients, this has worked for them as well, is that you can honestly get through a big chunk of the morning without breakfast and just having some coffee. That seems to tide the hunger signals for a while. And especially once you get rolling with it for 2, 3, 4 days, your body will acclimate pretty quickly to it. And, you could push your first meal all the way back to 2 p.m. or 3 p.m. or 4 p.m. And then what that allows you to do is get your daily calories, which should be a relatively big number. Let's say you're dieting on 1,600 calories. Well, if you have 1,600 calories to eat during the day and you push your first meal back to 2 p.m., then you have, 2 p.m. to, I don't know, when do you finish dinner normally? 7 p.m.? So you have a 5-hour window, a smaller window to eat a lot of calories. And what that does is help you feel really satiated, really full, and satisfy those desires for hunger that you would have normally. A lot of satisfying hunger is feeling full. So by pushing that first meal so far back in the day, you're able to kind of smash a bunch of calories into a smaller window of time, feel full, which, satisfies that need, but you're also still in a calorie deficit over the course of an entire day. So you're still accomplishing being in a calorie deficit, but you're just squeezing that feeding window into a smaller period of time. When I was younger, that's what I did. And I didn't even know I was doing intermittent fasting, but I wasn't terribly motivated in high school or college to wake up and accomplish things in the morning. So, my goal was okay, let's sleep as long as we can until first I have to get up to go to my first class, and I'll just roll into class. So I never ate breakfast, and my first meal would always be in the afternoon. And it's probably something that helped me prevent gaining the freshman 15 or a ton of weight in college, because I just wasn't eating the first half of the day. But then I felt really full the rest of the day because I was able to stuff my face. Like I said, I didn't know I was doing it back then, but it's something that I think actually probably helped me stay relatively lean throughout college. And these are all examples. You need to find what's going to work for you, but those are two: the timestamp method and then the method of just skipping breakfast and pushing that meal as late in the day as you can. Those are two examples of ways that you can perform intermittent fasting. And again, it's all about just you finding a framework that works for you, and then you have to adhere to it. So that's the big piece. So let's get into, to wrap this up, we'll get into some coaching cues about utilizing intermittent fasting on a daily basis. All right, so there are no hard and fast rules here. That's the name of the game. And in terms of the coaching cues is you don't have to fast for any specific amount of time. I will say, like, you probably have to be on a daily basis, hours wise, time wise, fasting for longer than whatever your feeding window ends up being. If you're doing like 12 on, 12 off, you're not really doing intermittent fasting. But generally speaking, you don't have to do a specific schedule. You don't have to eat any specific foods. You don't have to do any specific types of workouts. And there is no magic to any of this. It's setting up a schedule that is advantageous to helping you burn fat and lose weight. So all you have to do is choose a model. And from there, like I ended the examples with, adhere to it as consistently as you possibly can, and hold yourself accountable. If you're not doing that, just like with any other diet, if you're doing keto, but you're having ice cream, well, I guess keto and ice cream wouldn't work out. If you're doing carnivore and you're having ice cream, it's not going to really work. You're not really adhering to what the focus or the goal of that diet is. So you need to hold yourself accountable. You need to adhere to the schedule that you're setting up for yourself. And then quite simply from there, experiment, evaluate your progress over time. Don't make rash decisions, but weigh yourself every morning on a daily basis. See how your weight reacts. See how you're feeling, and make changes as you go. If you start with a 16-8 and you find out that like 8 is just, it's just like stretching it a little bit too much, you could go to 15-9, and maybe 15-9 works out for you perfectly. You're allowed to do that. You can change. You don't have to be doing any one thing. So that's my coaching recommendation to you. If you want to try intermittent fasting, I highly recommend it. If you're trying to lose weight, it just simplifies things, and adhere to it. Be consistent, track your progress, and you're going to find that you make progress over time if you're reading and reacting to it in a way that makes sense. So that's going to wrap up today's episode. A little bit of a longer one, but I was happy to jump back on here and also happy to update you guys on everything that's been going on, and looking forward to putting out more episodes here moving forward. So thanks again for listening. Like I said, if intermittent fasting is something that you're interested in getting a little bit of coaching on, or, you just have health and fitness goals, or you just, want a trainer to be able to bounce information off of, that's what I do. So please feel free to reach out to me, chrisgatesfitness.com. That's where all of my coaching information is. I also have hundreds of articles on training, nutrition, mindset, really anything related to pursuing these types of goals on my website. So check that out. Follow me on all the social media platforms. Just search for Chris Gates Fitness. Subscribe to the podcast. Leave a comment or a review if you can. That really helps me out. And I will talk to you guys again in the next one. All right. See ya.